prevention is the best way to navigate these things, is to have a policy that says, look, absent a court order or something of that nature, then we will require written consent from both parents or, legal guardians. Even kids, they are in the learning process about how to, like, what is it going to be like when the parents are no longer around? So there's like some hidden lessons that, can be taught on either side of that situation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Steps, produced by Apollo Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. We're kicking off our April series, and this month we're going deep into something that affects every single one of you that runs a studio or youth athletic sports organization. If you teach classes or work with kids in any sort of performance setting, we're talking about legal protection. I can't believe in 6 years we have not talked about this. I feel like we've said over and over and over, as studio directors or insert coach director of anything else, you wear many hats. And I feel like lawyer is always something that we toe the line on. Maybe we probably shouldn't. And that's what we're going to talk to Amanda on today. Again, we brought someone in who is absolutely the right person to guide us through this. Amanda Wright is a family law and civil rights attorney who works with families and organizations navigating some really complex situations. And just a quick note to everybody out there watching, while Amanda is a lawyer, this conversation is really just for general information and education. It is not legal advice, and it doesn't create an attorney-client relationship. Every child custody situation is different, and laws can vary a lot depending on where you're located. So if you're dealing with something specific, it's always best to talk directly with an attorney in your area who can guide you based on your unique situation. Amanda, welcome to Beyond the Steps.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Melissa, take it away.
Much, much needed, and happy to have a first-time guest with us. And Amanda, I want to start with something that I think a lot of studio owners have faced, but maybe didn't know how to handle: court orders, custody agreements. What do they actually mean for us on the ground? Like, if a parent hands me a document at the front desk, what am I even looking at when I'm looking at like a court order or custody agreement?
If they even hand you a document, right? Like,
Yes. So first, let's all just remember that, like a dance studio, your job isn't to necessarily interpret the order or enforce the order. So we'll just kind of start the conversation there. But if you are given, and there will be certain circumstances in which you would want to have that document, right? You're going to be looking for two kind of like critical pieces. One is where it states who has legal custody and who has physical custody. Those are two different types of custody, right? And so the legal custody there's going to be a provision that most orders will have it bold and underlined. So it'll be easier to kind of like comb through. And then the legal custody piece is going to say who has the decision-making authority for implications such as extracurriculars, religion, education, stuff like that. So that is one piece you want to look for. And then you're also wanting to look for another provision that actually discusses extracurricular activities. So that will look like who is responsible for enrolling, who's supposed to give the other parent notice, things of that nature. So those are kind of the two big provisions you're going to want to look at and become familiar with.
are we required to ask to see that agreement if you know that they're in a divorce situation? Because you don't know a lot of the times unless you're told what's going on. And I can tell you, in my 20 some years of running studios and programs, I dealt with a lot of custody situations, most of them very nasty, and very hard to navigate, but nobody ever presented me with any sort of documentation. We just had to sort of feel our way through it. So do you recommend asking for that or stay away from it?
I would recommend, if there is a potential conflict coming up, and a parent says, well, I have custody, it's my decision, you're not supposed to communicate with this parent or the other parent, I would certainly ask for that documentation, because if there is not a custody order in place and then both parents legally have rights to that information and access to come pick up the kids, so on and so forth, absent a court order that says otherwise.
Okay, so basically, if somebody tells you that something needs to be done special, unique, specific to their situation, you have to ask for that requires icing out another parent or not allowing the child to go or whatever. You should ask for that documentation so that you're operating within that framework.
Yes, and it's again, like, you're not getting the documentation to be the enforcer, but it's for protecting your business and your liability, and really, that way you can say, "Okay, but the order says this, so this is our protocol, this is what we're gonna do," and then it kind of helps manage the expectations.
Got it. Thank you. That's actually very helpful. This one is really important because sometimes things escalate at pickup, and a teacher or a front desk person is the one standing there, right? And none of which are qualified to deal with any sort of situation that comes up like that. What should staff absolutely never try to manage on their own, and what do you recommend they do instead? What is that policy?
Sure. So I think it's important for staff to be kind of trained in this, right? One thing is you are not a supervised visitation facilitator, right? So anytime, you can feel the tension rising, if you will, you want to make sure that you're not pouring oil on a already existing fire. So keeping your own self emotionally regulated, right? Not committing to, okay, well, I'm not going to give this parent this information, not, putting hands or being physical with any of the parents. Don't try and run interference, things like that. And then also, you want to be careful with what words you use, because you don't want to assume liability on the business's side of things when you can avoid that situation if all possible.
Such a hard situation, and especially I can only imagine, like, Brie and have been in this situation multiple times, like, when the kid is there and you've got, one parent and another parent and the kid's there, and you're like, "Uh." You're trying to protect the child.
You're trying to protect the child when the parents are clearly not trying to protect the child, and you're just like, "What is happening?"
So just like staying out of like who is supposed to pick up the child, because you're not custody enforcement, right? And so that's why it's really important to have those documents so that you can say, well, this is what this says. And then also not being like in between communication, like a triangular communication, or taking sides between one parent or over the other. So just trying to like remain neutral. And I think what really helps to do that and to set the tone is to kind of bring these policies and expectations up to parents before their child is even enrolled in the class so that they know and it can expect. And then, of course, if it gets to a point where it's not safe, then call 311 or 911 or
So I want to talk about a really common scenario. Two parents who are not on the same page. One parent says the child can go to competition. The other says no. One parent updates the emergency contact. The other disputes it. Staying neutral in those situations and staying legal, especially if now that you've said, what you said about a court order, if there's no court order. So you can't say, no, I'm not, no, I'm not telling this parent, or no, I'm not, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, hey, call a lawyer. Bye. Like, I don't even know what to do in that situation. What do you do and stay legal?
what I would suggest is, again, kind of like prevention is the best way to navigate these things, is to have a policy that says, look, absent a court order or something of that nature, then we will require written consent from both parents or, legal guardians. And if we don't have that written consent, then your child cannot participate or travel or so on and so forth. That way, they know what's going to happen, and then if they get upset later, you can have your feelings, but we told you what the procedure would be. We're giving you plenty of notice ahead of time of, okay, here is the consent form. We need it by this date, like 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Um, that would be my suggestion. Now, let's say that doesn't happen, and a parent withdraws their consent. From a legal standpoint, I would say, sorry, but the kid can't go. It does open, the studio up for risk and liability if the child does go and they get injured, let's say.
So okay, I hear you. This legally and logically that makes complete sense. You have to protect the business. You're dealing with a child. It's not their fault. And I want to, before I go on this next tangent, I want to say I understand it's not their fault. And I have seen this at all ages from little itty bitties to 18-year-olds and everything in between. And I think what is frustrating from the organization standpoint is like you have these people who are bringing their child. When you get to a competitive level where people are paying a lot of money, they're spending a lot of time. You've outlined the expectations on your end for the season for everybody to attend, mandatory attendance, cost structure, all of the things that are involved in being part of a competitive program. And you lay that out at the beginning of the year, people sign on, they sign the contract, they say, I'm going to commit to this. Now you've joined in with a team full of, potentially 10, 15, 20, 50 other people, right? Who are also paying that money, who are also committing to this thing, right? Inevitably, what always happens, this is happening on my son's soccer team right now. This has happened in dance studios, gymnastics studios, cheer teams. There is one parent that says, I don't agree with this. I'm not on the weekends that I have my child. I'm not bringing my child. If that weekend of competition falls on the weekend that I'm with my child, I'm not bringing them and they are not allowed to go, which impacts, of course, the child, but also then it's a team of kids that are affected. It's a coach, it's all the people who have invested and poured their heart and soul and their time and their resources, and other parents who have paid their hard-earned money to do this activity. They're now affected, and it really, what it comes down to is everybody's going, yeah, it's a really unfortunate situation, there's nothing we can do about it. But I'm the one sitting there going, then they shouldn't be participating in said activity. I understand that's hard for the child, but when you get to a competitive level of anything, that is just what it requires. And I think that that's where the line has to be drawn. If two parents can't get on the same page about it, then the kid needs to be removed. And I've had lively discussions about this, and I'm sure there's people that are yelling at me going, you're completely wrong. And I accept that. But I've been on all sides of it. And I can honestly say that is my conclusion is I feel like when it gets to the point where it's competitive and a lot of money and commitment is involved, the best thing to do if you can't get on the same page is to remove that child from it for the sake of the child, for the sake of the team and everybody else involved. Melissa, what do you think?
That is heartbreaking. That's what I think. I think that that is extremely heartbreaking. And but it's 100% true. I mean, and I have had that plenty of times where, yeah, it's my weekend and I'm not coming. What? I just think that that's ridiculous. And off on a tangent, and this show has nothing to do with this, but if you're two adults who've chosen to have a child, I'm gonna need you to be two adults that have chosen to have a child.
Sure, but what happens when that doesn't happen? That doesn't happen. 8 times out of 10, right? The parents, it's a dig, 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 dig back at each other the whole time, and it's a I'm gonna stand my ground. But you've got all of these other people that are now affected. So is it right for that child to be taking up a spot on a team or a program that other people want that got shut out, right? To be there 50% of the time, maybe, right? Is that okay? I just I really like I don't mean to sound, it is heartbreaking. We are in agreement about that. It's very heartbreaking. But at the same time, it's the reality of the situation. We have to like acknowledge it. So, is there any recourse for, are you saying basically it is okay to basically as a program say, look, these are our expectations. If you can't do this, is that okay to do?
Yes, I think it's necessary. And within that policy or form, I think you would then need to like lay out, depending on how the payment plan is structured, how you would handle that scenario too. That would be something that you would want to consider. But I definitely think it's necessary. And like I hate to say it, but even kids, they are in the learning process about how to like, what is it going to be like when the parents are no longer around? So there's like some hidden lessons that, can be taught on either side of that situation.
And that, so sub question, the same thing goes to payment, right? Like we've had parents completely stop paying, and one parent is like, well, so and so is supposed to pay for it and they haven't. And we're like, well, we're a business, so we're just trying to get paid. I'm sorry, like what is the recourse there? And again, I've been on both ends where it's gotten to be almost a year down the road, and I've had to pull a kid and not let a kid come to class or be in the recital because we haven't collected any money, or made the decision we're going to let this kid do it because it's heartbreaking, right? Like we can't say no, it's not their fault. And so is there any recourse there? Like does I mean, is it really that one parent has to pay for it, and if it doesn't get paid then the other parent just doesn't pay? Like so nobody gets paid? How does that work?
Well, it depends, right? Like if you do have a custody order and a child support order, it's going to lay out who's responsible for what percentage or what specific activity, right? So that's another reason why you want to ask for that documentation if it exists. In terms of whether you can get recourse for, monies owed to the studio, depending on the amount, yes. And you can do that through contract, small claims court, things of that nature. But you're not going to most likely be able to, so and so's dad should be in contempt because they're not paying on this. That would be on the shoulders of the other.
Well, and the money and time to get something and I think that's where most studio owners land, is that like, I don't have the time or the money to pursue this and I'm just going to let it go. But as it's really important, again, to give perspective to those two adults who made these decisions, right? You're affecting a small business who is just out there providing a service that has nothing to do with your situation, that should get paid for the service they're providing. And you're also affecting other children and parents who pay their hard earned money to come and do this. So I think, yes, it's heartbreaking. Yes, divorce is a very normal, common thing. And it affects a lot of families, and a lot of people do it really well. But for the people that aren't, basically stop being selfish. I don't know what else to say. Like it drives me in. The topic. Can you tell I've been holding this in for like 20 years?
Look, it's a real thing, and it's frustrating because it's like, the kids at the end of the day are the ones that suffer, and you're not helping yourself or them or really anyone by like behaving in that way.
Well, and just before we close this out, I just want to say for anybody looking to come at me or is shooting daggers at their screen right now, I said when it gets to a competitive level. I did not say any activity. I said competitive levels. Thank you so much, Amanda. This has been really insightful.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been a great time with you all.
So we want to definitely remind you guys that the STEPS initiative is still out there. You've learned a lot from Amanda, but we also have other resources that you can learn a lot from other people. The STEPS initiative was formed in 2020, and this is the impetus for this entire show, all 6 seasons, where we have free modules that are open to you on everything from sex abuse and prevention to gender equity to racism, nutrition, psychology, medicine and science, you name it, and it's all free. You can find that at the Apollo Performance website. Make sure you take it and let people know that it's out there because it is free, 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 free. Amanda, this has been incredible and so helpful. And we absolutely have to have you back next week to do more. What do you think? Are you coming back for us?
Oh, I'm definitely coming back. We have so much more to cover, and it's been a blast. And I hope it's been a little bit helpful, at least to someone.
I'm sure it has. And Bree and I have about 20, 30 years of pent up questions that we still want to ask you. So we are happy to have you back next week. And to everyone listening, if this episode has given you even one thing that you're going to change or put in place in your studio, that is a win. Share it with a fellow director, coach, teacher who needs to hear this. Please remember, this conversation is for general information and education purposes. It's not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. Every situation is different. So please make sure that you check the laws in your state and contact a professional attorney who can help you with your specific situation. With that being said, we will be back next week with more